So in this video, I just want to show you how to use the NETM plugin, the glossary converter and the glossary plugin in a simple project. It's fairly unrealistic, it's not really how you would work, but it will show you how to use the plugins. So I have a number of files here that I'm going to open, or that I'm going to work with. I have this one, which is a single spreadsheet, Excel spreadsheet, that just contains some English terms and a few Chinese and a few Hebrew terms, all in the same column in my spreadsheet, and I'm going to translate that. I have another spreadsheet here. This one just contains German and English terms. This particular one I'm going to convert into a translation memory going German to English. And then I'm going to translate this file from English, Hebrew and Chinese into German. So I have two translation memories here as well, the Hebrew to German and a Chinese to German. So I'm missing an English to German, and I only have the possibility to convert a German to English. So these are what I'm going to use for the purpose of this demonstration. So first of all, what I'll do is I'll just open up the file for translation in Studio. I'm just going to use the translate single document for this purpose. So I'm going English to German. I won't add a translation memory at this stage. I'm just opening the file up. Let me close that window down the bottom here. I don't want that open just yet. I had that there from when I was playing around before. And I'll just save that file to create a little single file project that I'm going to work with. Okay, so but just in case anybody didn't know, that's now created a single file project. You can see that down there, it's the active one, and it's called a single file project because I've just used the open document approach to create my project. Now what I'm going to do, first of all, is I'm going to add a term base. So the term base that I'm going to add to this will be based on this file, this little glossary, which is just English and German terms. There are some synonyms in there, and you can see they're separated with a pipe symbol. So there's a few more there. I've got 3 synonyms. Otherwise, it's an entry, a term base entry per row in my spreadsheet. So English down the left, German on the right, synonyms separated with a pipe symbol. I then come back to Studio, and you can see I've got no term base attached here. There's nothing in here at all. So the first thing I'll do is click on my projects view, and I have this project glossaries group in Studio. This is what the glossary plugin adds to Studio. So I'm going to import my simple glossary like that. It recognizes the languages already, and that's it, I'm done. So if I now come back to the editor and I move down into an English term perhaps, you can see that there we go. I'm getting the English term with 3 German synonyms, and the red line is over the top. And actually, if I just put the term-based viewer into place, if you're wondering why that was so quick, it's because I'm running SP2, which has got no Java, and it's very fast. Okay, and this allows me, well, you can see I've got all the terms and things down there. If for some reason I didn't want a term in there, SP2, I'll just show you quickly, I can delete it from here. Just something you can't do with the previous versions. So losing Java has a number of really nice enhancements. That's just one of them. There's a lot more things, including this quick add new term, which I'm not going to go into here today. Now, so I've added my term base using the glossary plugin, very straightforward. What I want to do now is add my translation memories. And I'm going to start off with the doing the English to German. I'll forget about the other source languages for the time being. So this project is American English to German. I don't have an English to US translation memory, but I do have a spreadsheet containing German to English terms. So I'm going to use the glossary converter, which I'm just going to start up from, I've got some little shortcuts here in Total Commander. I start up the glossary converter, and this is the glossary converter. If I click on my settings, there's an option down here to use the selected output format for any input format. So what this basically means is that whichever file I try to convert, and that could be any one of these file formats, when I drop it into the glossary converter, because it's just a drag and drop, if I have this box checked, then whichever of these items I have selected, that's what the file will be converted into. So what I'm saying is here is that when I drag my German English spreadsheet into the glossary converter, I want it to convert it to a TMX, to a translation memory exchange file, not to a term base this time. So I click on my file formats. No, I don't. I just click on OK. And then I go back, pick up my German English TM, drop it into the glossary converter. It recognizes the languages the same as it would do with a term base. Say OK. And I connects it at that point. And I now have a TMX file. And if I just look at the TMX file, you can see I've got all of my TUs, DE to EN. Because I didn't select the specific flavor, it's just got the main core language group, German and English. But that doesn't matter because Studio can ignore those and it will deal with it in any way I want it to deal with it when I upgrade the translation memory. So I go to my translation memories and I'll click on Upgrade Translation Memories, Add File Based, and then I'll pick, let me go and find it again, make a note of where it is, that TMX. So I paste the path in, there's the TMX. And I'm just going to say finish at that point. It's going to go fairly quick because there's only 38 TUs in there. It was very quick. Can delete the temporary files. And that's my translation memory converted. So I should now have the extra one. Here I do. The German English TM. Now this is the wrong direction as you've noticed. But note I've just got that one TM there. If I come back to Studio now and I go back to my project, I can now click on my project settings. I can add that translation memory. And you're probably wondering how's that going to work because it's the wrong languages. And you're absolutely right, it doesn't work. I get this message telling me that the translation provider doesn't support any language pair in this project or project template. So what I do instead is I select the any TM, any file-based TM, because that's what this is. Now I can pick the translation memory, and when I open it this time it allows me to do it. And it's set to update, and I click on OK. And there you go. I'm getting a lookup from my German English translation memory in my English German project. And where I had multiple translations, it's actually giving me a penalty for the multiple translations. So that seems to work quite nicely. And I could go down through here, just selecting, I could pre-translate the file with that. In fact, let's just do that just quickly to show you how that works. So I can pre-translate the files. I'll just drop the setting here to 96 just so that I populate everything. Reopen it. And when the file reopens it, this time I've got all my English to German populated. Now if I go back to my folder, you'll notice now that I also have an NETM reverse translation memory here. And that's because when you select a translation memory which is working in the reverse direction, the NETM application will automatically create the reverse direction TM and then maintain it for you. So from now on as I'm working, I would only need to select this one still, and it will manage the indices in both directions. So whether I'm going English German or German English, it doesn't matter. I just always select this one using the NETM app. That's the important thing to note. You must select the NETM app if you want it to work in both directions. So that was pretty cool. But then how do I deal with the slightly unrealistic German, Chinese to German and Hebrew to German translations that I had to do now? Clearly I don't want to put those into my English-German translation memory. So what I can do is I'll come over here and I'm just going to, I'll remove this language for the time being. I could leave it there, but I'm going to add through my NETM again, because clearly I couldn't add a Hebrew and a Chinese translation memory to this particular project. But with the NETM I can, so I can select them both. And this allows me to add my translation memories. I just check the update so that they're both being updated. And I click on OK. Now you can see I'm immediately getting a lookup. And this is bound to happen because with NETM it's allowing me to use the lookup. But what I wanted to show you that's very specific to this application is that if there was nothing in there and I was translating, the NETM application allows me to automatically recognize the language of the source column. So if I click on Mixed Source Language Translation, it brings up this extra window at the bottom. I don't have to have this all the time here, but I'm just going to leave it for the time being so I can show you what happens. So I can say this project contains content in more than one source language, and I check the box to say yes it does. And then I can say auto detect them, and it's gone through and detected that I've got Chinese and Hebrew in there as well. And it did that from looking at the file, not from the translation memories that I'm looking at. Now if you see down here, because I've got this box ticked, auto detect segment source language, as I arrow down through here, in addition to looking up in the translation memories, it should be telling me which the source language is, so that if I had to translate it, rather than it just be there in the lookup, I could do, and it would populate the correct translation memory. So it should swap the translation memories as I'm working. So the first one is abeyance. The next one is a Hebrew segment, so look out to see this change to Hebrew and this change to Hebrew as I move down through the segments. So I move down one. Now I've got Hebrew in both places, as you can see, down here and down there. And then if I arrow down again, it changes to Chinese, then to Hebrew, then to Chinese, then to Hebrew, to Chinese, to Hebrew, to Chinese, to Hebrew, which is pretty clever stuff. So it's allowing me to use multiple source translation memories with a multiple source document and put them in the right place automatically. If it didn't recognize a language for some reason, you can also change it manually. So you can pick on the drop down box, you can pick the language you want it to go into, and then make sure it goes into the right one. That's quite important because sometimes I noticed I did a test not so long ago with Dutch and Afrikaans, and it did struggle a bit to tell the difference between the two. But with the drop down, and if you have this window open, you can see and make sure. Plus, of course, you can see which translation memory it's going into. So there's lots of ways to check, but it's a nice little application. And that's basically how you would use those applications. But I'm not going to stop there, because what I want to do just before I finish is I'm going to close Studio, and I'm going to do one more conversion with the glossary converter. And this time I'm going to pick something a little more complicated. So I've got a spreadsheet here. This spreadsheet contains, there we go, whoever wants to open up, contains the name of a client, a reference to an image, and then I've got an English term, and then various fields related to that term: German, French, Spanish, Italian, Danish, Swedish, and Russian. So a multilingual term base with lots of different definitions and fields. And all I'm going to do is start up the glossary converter again. This time I go into my settings and I'm going to uncheck this box, because I'll just put it over here to begin with, because I like to leave it on the workbook. Go back and check this to use the selected output format for any input format. So this time, if I drag a spreadsheet in here, by default, this converts it to a translation memory. Not to a translation memory, excuse me, converts it to a term base, which is what we want to go to, a multi-term term base. Now, point to note here is that my glossary file is called 002-glossary.xlsx. That's just the name of the file. This folder here contains all the images that I referenced in that folder, in the Excel spreadsheet. So they are in a folder that's called media underscore, followed by the name of the Excel spreadsheet without the XLSX bit on it. That's important, and that's just the syntax that is used for this particular process. So I pick up the 02 glossary, I drop it into my settings. It recognizes all the different fields. I click on OK, and that will then convert it straight into a term-based forming. So if I go back into this folder here now, so as soon as I click in here, you should see, there we go. As soon as it becomes live, you see all of the folders that have been created. So I've got all my index files, and I've got the SDL TB. If I double click the SDL TB, just to open up multi-term, you can see that the conversion has been successful, and I now have all of my terms with all of the definitions and everything else, and all the different languages automatically converted without me having to use multi-term convert or create a term base whatsoever, which is pretty impressive stuff. And those three applications, the NETM app, the glossary converter, and the glossary plugin, are applications that I think should be on the desk of and in the program of every SDL Trados Studio user. Hope that was helpful.